The first letter was hidden inside an old wooden box. The second was folded behind a photograph. But when Emma found the third letter, her hands began to shake. Every letter was addressed to her. Every letter had been written by the same man. The man she had spent 20 years believing had forgotten her. His name was Daniel. And the last letter was dated just 3 days before he disappeared from her life. Emma had always believed Daniel had walked away because he stopped loving her, but that night for the first time she wondered, what if he had never left her at all? Emma was 38 when she returned to the small town where she had grown up. She hadn't planned to stay. She only came back because her mother had passed away, and there were years of memories packed inside the old family house that needed to be sorted. The house looked exactly the same. The white porch, the old oak tree, even the little crack beside the kitchen window was still there. But everything felt different. Emma walked slowly through the rooms, touching things she hadn't seen since she was 18. Then she opened the closet in her mother's bedroom. Behind a stack of old blankets, she found a small wooden box. It wasn't locked. Inside were photographs, a silver necklace, and several envelopes tied together with a faded blue ribbon. Emma picked up the first envelope. Her heart stopped. Written across the front were 4 words, "To Emma, always." She recognized the handwriting immediately. Daniel, her first love, the boy who had once promised that he would never leave her. Emma sat on the floor. For 20 years she had tried not to remember him, but one look at that handwriting brought everything back. Daniel had been her best friend before he became the person she loved. They met when they were 16. He worked after school at his father's small bookstore. Emma used to pretend she needed a new book just so she could see him. Daniel always knew. One rainy afternoon, he finally asked her why she kept buying books she never finished. Emma laughed. "Maybe I just like coming here." Daniel smiled. "Maybe I like that you do." That was the beginning. For 2 years they were inseparable. They talked about everything. Their dreams, their fears, the places they wanted to visit, and the life they wanted to build together. Daniel wanted to become a photographer. Emma wanted to study in New York. They promised that distance would never change anything. Then, 3 weeks before Emma was supposed to leave for college, everything changed. Daniel disappeared. No goodbye, no phone call, no explanation. Emma waited. One day became a week became a month. Eventually, she convinced herself that Daniel had simply chosen to leave years past. Emma went to college, built a career, got married, eventually divorced. She never stopped wondering about Daniel, but she stopped looking for him until the letters. With trembling hands, Emma opened the first one. "Emma, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if I will ever have the courage to give it to you. But I need you to know that leaving you was never my choice." Emma stopped reading. Her eyes filled with tears. She opened the second letter. "Your father came to see me yesterday. He told me your family needed you to leave town. He said if I truly loved you, I would let you go." Emma stared at the words. Her father? She read the letter again. Then again. She couldn't understand. Her father had always told her that Daniel had simply lost interest, that Daniel had left without saying goodbye, that she deserved someone better. Emma opened the third letter. "Your father offered me money to disappear. I refused. Then he told me something that changed everything. He said he would make sure your college opportunity disappeared too if I stayed." Emma covered her mouth. For 20 years, she had blamed Daniel. But Daniel had been trying to stay. She kept reading. "I love you too much to destroy your future. So I'm leaving. Not because I stopped loving you, because I don't know how to protect you any other way." Emma's tears fell onto the paper. She turned to the next envelope. There were dozens of them. Some were dated weeks after Daniel disappeared. Some months later. One was dated 5 years later, another 10 years later. He had written to her for years. Letters she had never seen. Letters her mother had apparently kept hidden. Emma opened one from 20 years ago. "Today I saw someone who looked like you. For 1 second, I forgot how to breathe. I still love you, Emma. I don't know if that's something I should be ashamed of, but I never learned how to stop. Emma couldn't continue. She put the letter down and cried. Then she noticed something written on the back of the final envelope. An address. Her heart began racing. She searched the address on her phone. It was only 40 minutes away. The next morning, Emma drove there. The address belonged to a small photography studio. She stood outside for several minutes before finally opening the door. A bell rang. A man looked up from behind the counter. Emma froze. It was Daniel. Older. His hair had turned gray. His face had changed, but his eyes were exactly the same. Daniel stared at her. Neither of them spoke. Finally, he whispered, "Emma?" She nodded. "I found the letters." Daniel looked down. His face immediately changed. "Your mother kept them?" Tss. Emma shook her head. "My father did." What? Daniel closed his eyes. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Emma asked the question she had carried for 20 years. "Why didn't you come back?" Daniel looked at her. "I tried." He walked to a shelf and pulled out a photograph. It was Emma at 18, standing beneath the old oak tree. "I came back 3 times, he said. "Every time your father told me you wanted nothing to do with me." Emma felt her heart break. That wasn't true. "I know that now." Silence filled the room. Then Daniel smiled sadly. "I used to imagine what would happen if we met again." Emma looked at him. "And?" He laughed softly. "I never imagined you'd still make me nervous." For the first time in 20 years, Emma smiled. But there was one final question. "Why did you keep writing?" Daniel looked at her as if the answer was obvious. "Because writing to you was the only way I could keep the promise I made." "What promise?" "Oh." He stepped closer. "That I'd never stop loving you." Emma looked down at the letters in her hands. She had spent 20 years believing their story had ended. But maybe it had only been interrupted. They spent the next few hours talking. About the years they had lost. About the people they had become. About the dreams they had once shared. They didn't pretend 20 years hadn't happened. They didn't pretend they were still 18. But they realized something important. Love wasn't always about waiting for someone. Sometimes it was about finding the courage to understand why they left. Before Emma left the studio, Daniel handed her one final envelope. This one was never finished. Emma opened it. There were only 2 lines. "I don't know if our story has another chapter, but if it does, I'd like to write it with you." Emma looked up. Daniel was waiting. She smiled through her tears. "Then, let's start." 20 years earlier, Emma thought Daniel had forgotten her. 20 years later, she discovered the truth. He never forgot. He never stopped loving her. And sometimes, the person you think walked away may have been fighting a battle you knew nothing about. Because not every love story ends when 2 people separate. Some stories simply wait until the truth finally finds its way home. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Tale Viora for more emotional love stories, unforgettable twists, and stories about love, loss, and second chances. Until the next story. Remember, sometimes the love you think is lost is simply waiting to be found.